Welcome to our podcast, Rare Resilience. In this podcast, we aim to provide insights and support for the rare disease community, providing caregivers with guidance for those living with rare conditions. And we'll navigate the rare disease journey together, one episode at a time. We'll be speaking with those who have been touched by TANGO2 related deficiency disorder, a rare genetic disorder caused by changes in the TANGO2 gene. Those living with this disorder can experience episodes of acute and serious illness called metabolic crisis. Neurological problems, including intellectual delays and disability and developmental milestones, can also occur. TANGO2 deficiency can affect people very differently. There is currently no cure for the disorder, but research is underway to better understand and treat the disease. So, whether you're seeking support as a caregiver or here to learn about the intricacies of rare diseases, we're delighted you've joined us on this journey. Together, we'll navigate the challenges and triumphs of caregiving in the face of adversity. Special thanks to Horizon Therapeutics for funding this podcast and awarding the TANGO2 Research Foundation their Rare Is Global Advocate Grant, enabling us to produce this podcast series and develop educational resources to grow our offerings in support of the community.
In this episode, Ann Geffen, Executive Director of TANGO2 Research Foundation, will be speaking with Marcie Lopez and Dr. Seema Lalani. Marcie is mom to a TANGO2 angel, Sammy, who gained his angel wings at the age of 18. Sammy is the heart of TANGO2 deficiency disorder story. He was the patient who inspired the discovery of the TANGO2 deficiency disorder. In her role as executive director, Anne directs the foundation's goals and oversees its daily functions, including marketing, operations, programs, and financial management. She plays a pivotal role in both the recruitment and engagement of international key stakeholders and volunteers to serve families located in over 30 countries. Anne also spearheads the foundation's fundraising initiatives and propels the foundation's research funding mission. Anne, over to you for the conversation with Seema and Marcie.
Thank you, Raul. And then I also wanted to go ahead and provide a quick introduction to Dr. Seema Lalani. Thank you so much for joining us, Marcie and Seema. Dr. Seema Lalani is a professor at the Department of Molecular and Human Genetics at Baylor College of Medicine. And in 2016, her and her team identified the first cohort of patients with TANGO2 deficiency disorder, which led her association with the TANGO2 Research Foundation. And she currently serves as a board member of the TANGO2 Research Foundation. Thank you so much, Marcie, Seema. It's really wonderful to see your faces. I just wanted to start with a simple question. And I know it's a pretty lengthy story, but we would just like to get a quick idea, Marcie, of how you found Seema. How did you get connected with her?
Well, we were referred to Dr. Seema Lalani by Dr. Timothy Lotzi of Texas Children's Hospital, which was his neurologist. When he basically had exhausted all the tests that I guess that he could do, he referred us to genetics, to our angel doctor.
And Seema, if you can kind of pick up from there and tell us where you met Sammy and Marcie and the family, the Lopez family, and what was it about the symptoms of the disease and of Sammy that made you tell yourself that this was new and novel?
So I remember following Sammy for several years in genetics clinic, and it took us a long time. As you know, in 2016, the gene was identified. But I remember his father bringing Sammy to our clinic, and he would talk about Sammy's struggle with his gait, his speech, and then later on with seizures. And then, but despite all the difficulties that came with this diagnosis, Sammy was Sammy. He just kept pushing himself. And I still remember his smile that summed up all his joy and love for the family and his friends around him. Mm-hmm. I wanted to dig deeper because he deserved more from his geneticist, I felt. At that time, we had no clue what was the reason for multiple problems. And then he became part of a research study, and we were seeing this pattern of muscle breakdown we call rhabdomyolysis and cardiac arrhythmia in multiple children. And that's what made us think that maybe this is a new genetic condition that we are dealing with. It still had some overlapping features with some of the well-recognized genetic disorders, but still it felt distinct. And that's when our team started to gather more information, contacted clinicians to try and really dig deeper into the story.
But I just wanted to hear, Marcie, like, what was your experience one of the first time you had a chance to interact with Seema? Because I asked this question because from the day that I've met you both in person, I see and sense a connection between you two. And I wanted to just hear that just a little bit coming from you, Marcie, because I know that you have a special connection with her.
We do. We're family. I think it was the fact that she genuinely wanted to find out what was wrong with Sammy. And we didn't feel like we had been with prior medical staff, not understood or not even believed that what we were seeing, because it was so quirky. We take Sammy and Sammy didn't cooperate. They didn't see what we were seeing. So sometimes we felt brushed off or not interested. And that was not the case with Dr. Lalani. She was very interested and she wanted to get to the bottom of it. And like she said, maybe Sammy won her over with that smile.
Sounds like it. And Seema, if you can share with me, from there, what was the progression into you getting a little bit more involved with the TANGO2 community? Because, I mean, as maybe some of people may or may not who are listening to the podcast, I mean, you've been so involved with the organization from day one, but I want to hear your side of it, like just hearing what Marcie just said and how you kind of took things to the next level and got a little bit more involved and dug a little deeper.
Yes, you're right. So it's true that from day one, when Mike Morris and Kasha Morris approached me to help them reach their goals for the foundation, I said yes. And I just took it upon me at that time that I'll do anything and everything to help this community. So I would say that there's not one thing that, and it's difficult to put into words why I continue to be part of this community. First thing is we are constantly learning from each other. Dr. Christina Miyake, who's a cardiologist, she wouldn't have discovered the benefit of vitamin B complex in reducing metabolic and cardiac crisis in this condition without conducting hundreds of hours of interviews with the families. So, it's really important to have that connection with the families because we are constantly learning from them. And the second thing is when so little is known about this disease that has taken the lives of Sammy and other children in the past, we cannot just be passive observers and not reach out to parents. And there is this constant desire on the part of all stakeholders to improve the lives of those children affected with TANGO2 disease. So we continue to work together. I will continue to try and do my best to get funding for the work that is so important. I will continue to be a part of conferences for parents and symposiums for parents to disseminate research information because we do want to improve the quality of life of our children.
That's great, Seema. We appreciate that so much. I know that you just mentioned about the vitamin B complex. Just for those who aren't familiar, if you can kind of expand on that a little bit and tell us the information on that.
Yes, so I would give full credit to Dr. Christina Miyake. She's the cardiologist who also from day one got very much involved with the children and trying to find out if we could learn anything from their experiences. So it took hundreds of hours of interviewing the families, knowing exactly what the children were, on which supplements they were, how many crises they had, and finding the children who actually did not have cardiac crisis and what supplements they were on. So it was very meticulous, tedious work that Dr. Christina Miyake did. And it was her discovery that eventually she figured out that children who were on vitamin B complex it looked like they were having less cardiac crisis or almost no cardiac crisis compared to those who were not on these supplements. So it was huge for our community, for our children, and we've seen the results just in the last few years when most of our families are now on vitamin B complex. It's really changed the direction, the natural course of the history. So really, really grateful for her work and for all the people and all the families who supported her.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And Marcie, I know that Sammy is not with us anymore, but I always think about him and how he leaves a legacy and how your involvement of the community and getting others involved in the natural history study and talking to Dr. Miyake and all those little steps add up to this discovery of this B vitamin complex helping these kids. And with that, can you tell us some examples of how you feel supported by the community and why you stay involved with the TANGO2 community?
Because Sammy mattered, and I want to make sure that that no one else goes through what we've gone through, and it's important. I made a promise to my son that I would, stay involved. It hasn't been easy. I just have to keep going, and don't let his death be in vain.
Yeah. And are there ways that you feel staying involved has given you maybe a little bit of comfort or a little bit of strength? If you can share with others that may be going through similar things or fearful of similar things, we love to hear that. If this community has provided any support for you in that way.
It has. And, a lot of parents write me, privately about their fears, and it can be overwhelming sometimes, but I'm glad that they can come to me and we can provide some comfort for each other, especially the ones that have lost their children. So, we know what we're going through.
Thank you, Marcie. I know I hear from other families all the time that you are so amazing to them in so many ways in terms of giving that support. And you mean so much to all of us. So I hope you know that. And we all think of Sammy very, very often. And if you can tell me a little bit more about Sam and how he influenced the lives of perhaps his friends, the community. I mean, we always hear that Sammy was the big brother to everybody. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Of course. We live in a very tight-knit community here in Tomball, Texas. And so, there was no one else like Sammy in our community. So, we were not known as Marcie and Johnny. We were known as Sammy's parents. He spread joy. We have a community here that helped us take care of him. We never had to fear him going to school, that something's going to happen to him, because he was protected. He really was. And, he was just inspirational to other kids. They felt like, if Sammy can go through that, what am I worried about, or what am I whining about? I heard that from many of his friends after he left us. So I feel like I've, sadly, I lost my son, but I gained a lot of daughters and sons that still, visit me, write to me. You just can't do it alone. So I'm grateful for the legacy he left, the friends that he left me, because they're like my children. And so, it's a beautiful thing, as much as it's a sad thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I see all your beautiful Facebook posts and for his birthdays and, all these special occasions, Christmas, whatever it may be. I see an outpouring of love of all his friends every single year, every single holiday.
I'm Mama Lopez to a lot of kids here in the Tomba community, and I'm honored.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And the TANGO2 community too, Marcie.
Of course.
I'd like to go ahead and pass it over to Raul, who's on the call with us, and he would love to asking some questions to you both.
Marcie, thank you so much for sharing how you've touched these families. I know that many families come with a heavy heart when they've first gotten the diagnosis, and I'm wondering if you can share some of the advice that you give to newly diagnosed families.
Basically, my biggest advice has been that you are your child's biggest advocate. Don't let anyone tell you that you're crazy or that, you keep pushing, because you're their voice and someone will listen. And just like we found with, Dr. Lalani, she listened, and here we are today, So that's my biggest advice is just keep pushing.
Rare diseases are so often difficult to identify in the clinical setting, not least because of the time constraints that most clinicians are under in being able to essentially quickly diagnose what's going on. So, Seema, I would love to hear from you the same question, the answer to the same question of what's your advice to newly diagnosed families, particularly in how to gain the attention from a clinician into looking beyond the surface and finding the root cause and how to support the patients through that journey.
I would agree with Marcie, being the greatest advocate you can be for your children. And once you get a diagnosis, knowing that you're not alone in this journey, there is help for your child, and there are treatment options now available that can actually change the course of the disease. So we've come a long way in the last 5 years. And especially the story about vitamin B complex is an important one, right? And now almost every family is on these supplements, and we are seeing less and less cardiac crisis in children, which is amazing. So, it's very important for families, I would say, to be part of research like this that gets you the treatment, that gets you the management option. So it wouldn't have been possible if the families were not part of the natural history study. So, and we are truly blessed to have this community that they have been fully supportive, and it's been participation in the natural history study, the movement disorder, and parents would send videos to us to try and figure out how what how to term those abnormal movements that they have been seeing in the children for such a long time. And it doesn't have a name because, as Marcie said, Sammy didn't cooperate because these things disappear by the time you get to a doctor. So you capture those movements at the right time, you bring it to the doctor and show them, this is what my child is experiencing. What is this? Whether it's a seizure or it's dystonia, we need to figure that out. So there's so much more to learn. And again, going back to families' participation, DNA sampling, biobanking, all these things are going to help us understand this disease better. So that's what I would advise parents to participate in any kind of research they can.
Wonderful. And from the clinician standpoint and the therapeutic standpoint, what are your hopes for this disease going into the future? What do you see on the horizon as kind of the next steps and the light at the end of the tunnel on this journey?
So many aspirations for this community. I would say for the next 5 years or so, I hope that we can add TANGO2 deficiency disorder to newborn screening. I think we need to make this diagnosis earlier and sooner because we can, as I said, give the right medication and change the course of the disease. My hope is that no child should wait 16 years like Sammy did to get this diagnosis. It's just not right. I would also want the carrier testing to be widely available for couples who are planning to have children. This is an autosomal recessive disease. Parents are carriers. and they are completely unaware of this if they've not had a child with TANGO2 deficiency before. So being advised about their own risks of having a child with TDD is extremely important. So that's my hope, that it gets to carrier screening broadly in the coming years.
And what has to happen from the clinical landscape for those things to integrate into the normal screening process? Is there a central body that needs to be convinced, or is it just a matter of informing people? How does it work?
So Rahul, that's going to be a big discussion. I think I can't even get into the newborn screening and the hurdles there, right? It's just too complicated. So, and the carrier screening, I would say it again, commercial labs trying to pick it up, or knowing that this is beneficial for them as well, or as well as the community. It just comes to that point of commercial, business side of it as well.
I see.
So,
And Marcie, what is your hope moving forward for from a caregiver's perspective for supporting families that receive this diagnosis? What would you like to see as that support structure to make this process easier?
Ultimately, that they would have a cure where they wouldn't be so burdened with, having to care for a child that, has many, many symptoms and disabilities, and just keep hoping for that one day.
And how have you felt about some of the changes in treatments and protocols? Have you followed what's been developed more recently and the insights that have come out from these surveys?
Yes, very excited to see all the hard work come to fruition, and I know there's more work to be done from this amazing team that works so hard day in and day out, and I'm excited for what's to come, and just knowing that my son's death will not be in vain. It's very exciting, and we haven't lost a patient probably in the last 5 years. So that's very exciting to see that, and just to see, what the research and the studies are finding out, and being able to have hope for the families that they can, do the vitamin B12 or, B5, I think is the latest one that was very hopeful. So I'm excited.
It certainly sounds like it does take a community to come together in order to collaborate and support one another from the caregiver's perspective and the clinician's perspective to push the advances in this forward. Seema, I'm curious about what your advice is for those with other rare diseases on how to attract researcher attention when they have a rare disease.
great question. I think reaching out and asking is crucial. You never know. Don't be afraid of asking a researcher, would you be interested in this disease? Would you help me? I think many times families are hesitant. And I think it's important to just, if you have an email, contact information. If that researcher is unable to help, maybe that person will guide you as to who to reach out to. I think that's how I remember my journey with TANGO2 started, the foundation, because somebody asked me if I could help out, and I said yes, and that was the greatest yes of my life. Some decisions are like that. So I would say do that, and continue, and don't give up, and continue to find somebody who can take this research to another level. So yes, I would advise that.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for the way that you've stepped up to support this community. And same to you, Marcie. I mean, certainly all of your contributions to the families that have been recently diagnosed are making sure that Sammy's death hasn't occurred in vain. You really are a wonderful support to this community.
Thank you.
And I wanted to pass it back over to you to share a little bit more about what's coming next in this podcast series. what do we have on the horizon?
Sure. So we're very excited to really have a wonderful community and community members that are willing to share insights and their experiences with TANGO2 disease. We have some researchers and other clinicians and families, different age groups, and we'll all be talking about their personal experiences as well as what their hopes are, what their fears are, and all touching on the topic of mental health and providing support to each other for other caregivers in different capacities. So we're very excited, looking forward to interviewing for more people. But again, I just wanted to thank you, Seema and Marcie. Hands down, this was the interview that I was really excited about, really looking forward to, just because of the origin story of this disease. And we are just so ever grateful for your contributions and what you mean to all of us.
Thank you, everyone.